2016 was a crazy MLB season that ended with a 108-year-old curse broken. It's wild to me that this was 10 years ago now, so I wanted to go back and look at the top 5 MVP vote getters in each league that year to see what these guys did after and what they're up to in 2026. Some of them are still playing at an extremely high level, some are out of the league, and some of them just broke your heart. Manny Machado can be called a lot of things, but uninteresting is not one of them. Out of all the players I'll talk about in this video, Machado has had the most drama since 2016, and the 2018 postseason is where things really went sideways for him. He got traded to the Dodgers after spending the first 6.5 years in Baltimore, and helped them reach the World Series, and somewhere in between managed to become the most hated player in baseball. He kicked Brewers first baseman Jesus Aguilar in the ankle during the NLCS, jogged to first on a ground ball, and when Ken Rosenthal asked him about it on national television, he just said that running hard is not my cup of tea, that's not who I am. And remember, he said this right before entering free agency. And then he got $300 million from San Diego, which was the largest free agent contract in baseball history at the time. So the lesson here is that if you're talented enough, you can say the quiet part out loud and it costs you absolutely nothing. He did have the option to opt out after 2023, which would have left $150 million on the table, and the Padres responded by signing him to a new 11-year, $350 million extension instead. The dirty play stuff goes deeper than just Aguilar too. In 2017, his spike-up slide into Dustin Pedroia's left knee basically ended his career. Pedroia tried to play through it, appearing in a combined 9 games for the next 2 seasons, and eventually had to get a partial knee replacement. That's the play that had the entire Red Sox fanbase ready to riot during the 2018 World Series, and it's the one where it's the hardest to give him the benefit of the doubt. None of that reputation has slowed Machado down though. He's been one of the most consistent hitters in baseball for the past decade, playing a full season nearly every year, which in this day and age seems to be increasingly rare. Since then, he's also won 3 Silver Sluggers, 2 top 5 MVP finishes, averaging nearly 30 homers a year and averaging over 4 WAR a season. He's a future Hall of Famer, he's under contract through 2023, and while he has taken a step back the past 3 seasons, I don't think many teams will complain about a third baseman, giving you good defense, around 30 homers a year, and a near 800 OPS. Nolan Arenado's whole career since 2016 is kind of a tragedy about wanting something you can never quite have. This guy is one of the greatest defensive third basemen who has ever lived, 10 gold gloves, and he spent the best years of his career on teams that couldn't do anything with him. He forced his way out of Colorado in 2021 after saying publicly there was no relationship anymore with the GM and that the organization had lied to him about their commitment to winning. The Cardinals got him for basically nothing, absorbing $50 million of his salary to make the deal work, and St. Louis was pretty good for a couple of years. Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt were both MVP finalists in 2022, with Goldschmidt winning, and it looked like they were the best duo in the NL. Arenado even turned down his opt-out that winter and said he was absolutely coming back, and it felt like things maybe were going to work out for him. Then the Cardinals fell apart. Went from 93 wins to 71 the very next year, then 82 wins, then a full rebuild. 2 straight years of trade rumors, and Arenado sitting there with a no-trade clause, blocking deals because none of the destinations felt right. Watching his production fall to .237 with 12 homers in 2025, while people questioned whether he was even the same player. And then in January 2026, the Cardinals paid $31 million of his remaining $42 million just to ship him to Arizona, and got back an 8th-round draft pick in the form of Jack Martinez. An 8th round pick for one of the greatest defensive players of his generation. After all that, Arenado told reporters, "I'm so much more relaxed now," which might be one of the most Nolan Arenado things anyone has ever said. He's in Arizona now, 34 years old, 2 years left on his deal, hoping Chase Field is kinder to his bat than Busch Stadium was. He's hitting .143 to start 2026, but that's 8 games in and means nothing. The glove is still going to be good, even if his defensive metrics have gone down with age. Whether the rest of him shows up is the whole question. This one's bittersweet. Rizzo was the heartbeat of the 2016 Cubs team, the guy whose mitt caught Kris Bryant's throw from third to end 108 years of suffering. He spent a decade in Chicago being exactly the kind of guy you'd want your team built around, and made 3 All-Stars, won 4 Gold Gloves, and was the kind of leader that organizations point at when they talk about culture. The Cubs broke everything up at the 2021 deadline, and Rizzo went to the Yankees, where he spent 4 years and made it back to 1 more World Series in 2024. Unfortunately, they lost to the Dodgers, but by then he wasn't really the same player. In 2023, he suffered a concussion after colliding with Fernando Tatis Jr., and that went undiagnosed for weeks, and the lingering effects were real as he was just never the same player after. New York declined his option after 2024, paid him a buyout, and nobody else came calling. In September of 2025, he announced his retirement at Wrigley Field, threw out the first pitch, and rejoined the Cubs as a team ambassador. 303 home runs, 965 RBIs, a World Series ring, and the Roberto Clemente Award. I think it's pretty safe to say that's a pretty excellent career. He's also a Hodgkin's lymphoma survivor who built a foundation to help families dealing with childhood cancer. Rizzo could have coasted on being a good first baseman, and nobody would have said anything. anything, but he's done a lot more than that. On the field and off the field, Anthony Rizzo was a great player and a great person, and I'm glad I got to watch him for a few years in pinstripes. So I didn't even realize when writing this how ironic it is that Anthony Rizzo and Josh Donaldson are back-to-back on here. Two players that got traded to the Yankees with wildly different personalities. The bringer of rain had a career that went from absolutely elite to kind of a disaster in just a few years. From 2013 to 2017, he was the second best position player in baseball behind only Mike Trout. And that's not exactly hyperbole, I'm just using WAR for that. Won an AL MVP in 2015, another great year in 2016, still really good in 2017 despite a calf injury. And then 2018 with the Blue Jays was a complete mess. Played 52 games and got traded to Cleveland, and that led to him signing with Atlanta the next year, where he had 37 home runs, 94 RBI, and it got him one last contract, which was a 4-year $90+ million deal with the Twins. He only played 28 games in 2020, but had a very solid 2021 season, which would be the last good year of his career. He was traded to the Yankees in 2022, and that's really where it came apart. On the field, he was a shell of himself. Off the field, there was the Tim Anderson incident, which you might remember. Donaldson called White Sox shortstop Tim Anderson Jackie because of a comment Anderson said himself earlier. Bench is clear, Donaldson got suspended one game, the suspension was upheld, and whether you think it was fair or not, it just added to his drama with the Yankees. As a Yankee fan, I hated watching him. He took so many pitches down the middle of the plate, would watch deep fly balls instead of running thinking he was gone, which he also did in the ALCS and got thrown out. I don't know a single Yankee fan that liked him. The Yankees cut him in August 2023 after he hit 142. He signed with Milwaukee, played 17 games, retired in March 2024, and that was it. In 2026, it looks like he's really just spending time with family and occasionally being involved in sports media. Corey Seager might be the most underrated great player of his generation, and I think it's because he isn't flashy. He just kind of shows up and hits. He won the NL Rookie of the Year in 2016 alongside his MVP voting here, missed almost all of 2018 with Tommy John surgery, came back and was a key piece of the Dodgers' 2020 World Series win as he won World Series MVP, signed with Texas for a huge deal worth $325 million, and then in 2023 had one of the best shortstop seasons in recent memory. 327 average, 33 home runs, 96 RBIs, second in AL MVP voting. Also, this was only in 119 games. Then the Rangers won the World Series, which was their first title in franchise history, and Seager was named World Series MVP again. He of course won with the Dodgers in 2020 in the NL, and then did it again with the Rangers in the AL, and he and Reggie Jackson are the only players in history to win World Series MVP with two different teams, and Seager is the only one to do it in both leagues. There is a catch though, and it's that he hasn't always been available. He's only topped 128 games once since coming to Texas. In 2025, he missed time with a hamstring strain, and then had an emergency appendectomy in August that ended his season at 102 games. When he's on the field, Texas wins. Getting him on the field is just the whole challenge. He had 6.2 WAR in just over 100 games last year, which is just absurd. Through the first week of 2026, he looks locked in. If he stays healthy though, you can mark him down for another great season. Can't have this conversation without talking about the elephant in the room, or the trash can in the room I should say. The 2017 Astros sign stealing scandal affected every player on that roster, but since Altuve was the face of the team, he took the most heat. There were buzz rumors from the 2019 postseason, which was the shirt-ripping moment where he had the walk-off, and this was investigated and nothing was found, but none of that fully washes away the stain when he played on a team that cheated, and this will probably always follow him even when he's in Cooperstown. What gets lost in all of this is how great his career actually has been. For basically a decade, he was the best contact hitter in the American League, 3 batting titles, 1 MVP, 8 All-Stars. In 2022, he hit 300 with 28 home runs at age 32 and still looked completely like himself. The last couple years have been rougher. The Astros for some reason moved him to left field in 2025, which felt deeply wrong, and he finished the year with a foot injury and a .265 average. For 2026, he's back at second base where he belongs, and it's too early right now in the season to really judge. He is 35 now, under contract through 2030, and one of the last men standing from the dynasty era in Houston. He's easily a Hall of Famer, but like I said, the controversy around 2017 will follow him regardless of how involved he was in it or not. Daniel Murphy's post-2016 story kind of went out fast, but in a weirdly likable way. He had a massive year for Washington in 2016, finishing second in MVP voting, another good one in 2017, but then the injuries piled up and never really went away. Bounced to Colorado, the Rockies declined his option, and in January 2021 he retired. However, in 2023 he got the itch back, came out of retirement at 38, played for the Long Island Ducks, which recently signed Trevor Bauer, and hit .331. This led to him getting a minor league contract with the Angels, but he only played 38 games in AAA, where he did hit .295, contract, but then he retired again in August 2023. In 2026, he's in the SNY broadcast booth doing select Mets games alongside Gary Cohen and Keith Hernandez. David Wright joked before his debut that they need to keep a leash on him. SNY has him back this season for a handful of regular season games, so it's a pretty solid landing spot for a guy who nearly willed the Mets to the World Series by himself. If you had asked me before making this video which of these 10 players had the best career since 2016, I would think maybe Machado, maybe Trout, because of just how great he was for those first few years after. But honestly, it's Mookie Betts, and it's not particularly close. Won the AL MVP in 2018 with a .346 average, a batting title, a Gold Glove, a Silver Slugger, and a World Series. And to my knowledge, he's the only player in MLB history to do all 5 in the same season. Then the Red Sox traded him to the Dodgers in 2020 for financial reasons, and Boston fans are still not over it. He won 3 World Series with LA since, and somewhere in the middle of all of it, he went from a fantastic outfielder to a shortstop at age 32. Committed to it in the offseason and worked with Troy Tulowitzki on his footwork, and finished 2025 as one of the best defensive shortstops in baseball by DRS. The Dodgers, of course, won back-to-back World Series, with Mookie Betts starting the double play that ended it all. Fun fact, he's also a PBA-level professional bowler who bowled a perfect game at the World Series of Bowling in 2017, which is such a Mookie Betts thing to do. Right now in 2026, he's on the IL with a right oblique strain that happened on a check swing in the first inning of an April 5th game against the Nationals. Dave Roberts is hoping it's less than the standard 4 to 6 weeks, but oblique injuries are notoriously unpredictable. The Dodgers have platoon options at short, and of course are still 6-2 at the time of writing. It also is worth mentioning that Mookie Betts did have a rough 2025, mostly due to some health issues, but I'd expect him to bounce back once he's healthy and have at least a couple more great years. And now we get to the MVP in 2016, Kris Bryant, and I struggled to write about this one because of just how far he's fallen. In 2016, he was 24 years old, the NL MVP, led the league in WAR, hit 39 bombs, scored 121 runs, and began the final play to end 108 years of Cubs suffering. I also made a video talking about the history of the Cubs if you're interested in that. But he was supposed to be a franchise player for a decade, the kind of guy you'd build everything around. There also is an ugly footnote before we get into what happened next. The Cubs kept Bryant in the minors at the start of the 2015 season, specifically so he'd finish with 171 days of service time instead of 172. One single day short of a full year. They started Mike Trout at third base on opening day, who had a 159 career batting average, while their best prospect hit 425 with 9 home runs in spring training. The whole thing was designed to delay Bryant's free agency by 1 full season, but it would lead to some CBA changes. Anyway, following the World Series in 2016, Bryant was great every year for the rest of his Cubs tenure, outside of 2020. When the Cubs decided to blow up the team in 2021, he got traded to the Giants and was solid. As a free agent, he signed a 7-year, $182 million deal with the Rockies, and that contract has turned into one of the greatest cautionary tales in recent baseball history. Maybe all of baseball history, to be honest. In 4 seasons in Colorado, Bryant has played 170 games out of 648. He's had back problems, foot problems, rib problems. In 2025, he played 11 games before lumbar degenerative disc disease ended his season. And in those 11 games, he hit 154. And now in 2026, the Rockies manager said at spring training that Bryant can't play baseball right now. Bryant himself has told reporters that he wakes up in pain every day. A medical analyst said bluntly that players don't come back from this, and the only surgical fix is a spinal fusion, which would effectively end his career anyway. The Rockies still owe him $81 million. People have started to talk about a forced retirement like Stephen Strasburg, and that's just not a comparison that you want. He will always have his legacy from 2016 and from being a great player for over half a decade, but what's happened since is just very difficult to watch unfold. And I truly hope for the last couple years of his career that he can make a comeback and perform well. Now, if Kris Bryant hurts to talk about, this is probably even sadder because at least Kris Bryant got his glory with the ring in 2016. Trout has not even been close to being as fortunate. For the entire 2010s, Mike Trout was not just the best player in baseball, but he was legitimately on a different level than everyone else. The decade's WAR leader by a huge margin, 3 MVPs, and honestly could have won 5 or 6 if the voters had seen it differently. There's just no one in the same conversation. After 2016, he had 3 more elite seasons, including winning the MVP in 2019, with 45 homers and a .645 slugging percentage, and then things started chipping away at him. 2020 was shortened, so we could set that aside, but in 2021, he got off to a super hot start with a .333 average, 1090 OPS in 36 games, and then got injured and never came back that year. 2022, he battled a back condition, but still hit 40 home runs in 119 games with a .999 OPS, which is the kind of season that Mike Trout and maybe a couple others can have while also being described as a down year. 2023 and 2024 combined, he only played 111 games. Hamate fractures 1 year, torn meniscus twice the next. Then 2025 was supposed to be the healthy comeback. He did play most of the season. He did miss some time, but played 130, which was his most since 2019. But the results were the worst of his career by far. 232 average, an OPS below 800, 1.5 F4. The guy who was once the undisputed best player alive just looked like a shell of his former self at age 33. Now in 2026, 26, he's back in center field, and he's actually gotten off to a solid start. His numbers look promising, but of course, it doesn't really mean anything since we're just over a week into the season. What is worth mentioning though is at the time of writing, Mike Trout just got hit on the hand, and hopefully by the time this video comes out, it ends up just being nothing, but it just seems like the guy can't catch a break at this point. He's 34 now, he's under contract through 2030. He has not played in a playoff game since 2014, and somewhere underneath all the injuries and the decline and the lost seasons, there is one of the best baseball players we've ever seen. I really hope we get a few more good years out of him, and I hope the Angels put a decent team around him, but hope only gets you so far with this team. And that is where the top 5 position players from 2016 in each league are now. 3 are retired, 2 have been often injured and have fallen from grace, but the other 5 are still well above average players, if not still great. Out of all these players, I think it's pretty safe to say that Machado, Arenado, Altuve, Betts, and of course Trout are future Hall of Famers. Seager probably too. Donaldson, Rizzo, and Murphy all had Hall of pretty good or Hall of very good careers too. So it's just interesting seeing where all these players are now. Let me know if you want to see more videos like this, and be sure to subscribe.